Give people just a minute to get in here and then we'll get started. All right. For the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Kane, Director of Communications at FLA, and welcome to our landowner learning session, exploring the new cost and trends data dashboard. So this is going to be a little bit different than some of our other webinars. Jeremy's going to take you through the dashboard itself. A few housekeeping notes. Questions will be answered at the end of the session, so you can use the Q&A function or the chat. This session is being recorded, so if you have to hop off, we will send out the recording afterwards. If you'd like, take the time, please let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. And those are the basic housekeeping rules, so I'll go ahead and get started. So to start the session, we will hear from Dr. Adam Maggard from the College of Forestry, Wildlife, and Environment at Auburn University. Dr. Maggard runs a cost and trend survey, and this year was awarded the 2022 Extension Forester of the Year Award from FLA for his continued work on this survey and this project. Dr. Maggard works as both an assistant professor and an extension specialist in forest systems management. And his recruitment of our Rob O Fellowship recipient, Jeremy Natzke, made this online dashboard possible. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to just take a minute or two here to kind of set the stage today. Then I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, who's been really the person behind the dashboard and making that happen. So just to get us started, I want to first thank the Forest Landowners Association, Forest Landowners Foundation for their support and working with us on the survey to try and improve the survey in general and kind of modernize it. That's more, kind of reflective of what we see in the forestry field nowadays, but also their support in terms of, helping us reach more participants in the survey. And that's one thing that I saw when I kind of took this over, the survey over a couple, I guess it's been about three, this will be my third full survey, kind of seeing over things. And I noticed that the participation in the survey has been decreasing for quite some time, and it was getting very minimal. And one thing I knew right away, and I knew the purpose of the survey, and I was really interested in the survey, and I know the benefits the survey brings to our industry and our landowners. And I knew right away we had to increase our participants and increase the folks that are involved in the survey. And I want to thank the Forest Landowner Association for helping helping us well with accomplishing that. I'd like to say that I know when we started this in 2018 was the first time we kind of took the survey and put it online. We tried to make it more user-friendly for folks, make it a little easier for folks to, participate in it and answer the questions. And we reached over 300 respondents the 2018 survey, or the 2020 survey, sorry. And the high prior to that, it was in the 1980s, and that was just over 180. So we did extremely well there with increasing participation. And then this year, again, we broke that with just about 370 participants in this survey. So I'm extremely happy with where that's headed. And again, I want to thank the Forest Landowner Association and Foundation for helping with that, as well as the U.S. Forest Service and their support with helping make all this happen as well. But that's just a little bit of history. This survey has a lot of history. It dates back to 1952. That was the first survey that was sent out based around Southern forestry and the practice cost. And in some sort of fashion, it's been done ever since. And around the early 1980s, it went to being conducted about every 2 years, and it's been that way ever since. So we are excited about continuing that. And we know the benefits for folks and being able to use that in research, use that in extension education, but also helping with landowners make, informed decisions, forecast, and financial decisions on their forest land. So with that, I'm not going to take too much more of your time. I'm excited to introduce you to the dashboard, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, who's going to kind of go through the dashboard. We wanted something that was available to folks that they could go through and they could sort and get the data that makes the most sense to them, to help them with what they need, a bigger platform, and make that accessible to folks. And I think we've done a good job of accomplishing that. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy Natzke, who is the Rob O Fellow at the Forest Landowners Foundation and Forest Landowners Association. And I'm going to let him take it from here. Jeremy.
Thanks, Adam. So my name is Jeremy Natzke, and I'm serving as the Rob O Fellowship, the Rob O Fellow. And today I just wanted to walk you through how to actually use the online dashboard, as it is a really cool tool, and there's a lot of things to explore and ways you can tailor the data to meet your own needs, as Adam was saying.
Hey, Jeremy, real quick, I forgot to mention, if folks want to follow along, the link to the dashboard is in the chat box. So they're more than welcome to click on that link and kind of follow you through the dashboard.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
So the cost and trends survey has historically been just represented in the Forest Landowner magazine. However, we wanted a little bit more of a way to tailor that data to what you actually need and are looking for as a forest landowner. There's a couple different types of forest landowners, such as family forest owners, our private industrial landowners, as well as state land ownerships that are all represented within the survey. So having an online platform to filter out the data to what you actually need is pretty critical. And there's a lot of different ways to explore the data that comes in through the actual forest, the cost and trends survey. So on this dashboard, when you walk through it on the Forest Landowner site, you're brought to the homepage here, which says the cost and trends of Southern forestry practices. On it, we have a little bit of information about the history of the survey, our methods and results of how we actually captured things, as well as some basic definitions of our individual tabs that we'll walk through in our observed forest management categories. We'll walk through a couple of these today, and we can allow you guys to explore these further on your own, where you can always reach out to Adam or myself to learn a little bit more about this information or explore further things. So walking through the first page, our number of responses is located up here in the top right-hand corner, which you'll see right here. This data set kind of does work pretty interactively. So by clicking on an individual thing, for example, the Northern Coastal Plain, it'll filter down data sets within it, data sets within this actual page, such like this bottom graph that we have here. For those that don't know where the Northern Coastal Plain, Piedmont, and Southern Coastal Ranges are, we have this map. This one is not interactive, but it labels what the regions actually are. So this A is going to be our Southern Coastal Plain, so everything that's really close to the coast. B would be our Northern Coastal Plain in this middle region, and C is the upper rolling hills of the U.S. South. Another thing that we can explore here is a cool feature on Power BI. We can right click on most of our bar charts and explore further data. So by right clicking on our bar, we can drill down, and drilling down allows us to explore all of the states within that region and the number of respondents from each region. You can't see who the actual respondent is, but you can see their actual numbers of people from each region. To go back up, you can simply right click and drill up and bring you back to where we were at. However, whatever you do on this site, after you leave the site, will be refreshed and you can't really break it. Similarly, if you want to see who provided data from terms of professionals, you can explore consultants, family forest owners, industrial professionals, other individuals who did not necessarily report what they were, and public lands foresters. is all reported down here by our provider land ownership demographic. That information might make a little bit more sense once we actually walk through an individual tab. So across the top here, there's a couple different tabs. We have things like mechanical site prep, tree planting, prescribed burning, herbicide application, fertilizer application, timber cruising, timber marking, pre-commercial thinning, custodial management, and emerging technology, which is a new category we added this year, as well as some sites. So we'll walk through a couple of these just so you get the layout of them and understand the general flow of how they kind of work. So we'll start off with mechanical site preparation. So after clicking on mechanical site preparation, this brings us to our data that we got from our 2022 survey. So in this top corner from right to left, top to bottom, we'll kind of walk through each graphic. Our average cost per region is saying what the total average cost was for all practices that were reported in mechanical site preparation. If we hover our cursor over the northern coastal plain, we'll see that the average cost of mechanical site prep in 2022 was $2,203.90. The total acres that was reported on was 2,200 acres, and our average tract size was 98 acres, or the average parcel that an individual was practicing on was about 98 acres, based off of 22 individuals. So N is going to be indicating the number of responses that was actually used to generate that value. And in this dashboard, we elected to show all of our responses. So if you see an N of 1, that just means that only one person reported data, where an N of 22 shows that 22 people provided information on that. Again, you can drill down on these fields by either right-clicking or just hovering your cursor and then moving over to drill down. And that'll drill down all the information on this page to just the region that you drilled down on. So we just drilled down on the northern coastal plain. So these are all of our states and how they range in the northern coastal plain. Again, we can drill back up and we'll see the average of everything. Since all of these charts kind of work together, we'll move to the next chart as well, which is our average cost per state. Our average cost per state is showing us our values on how they range state by state, where green is going to be our cheaper states and red is going to be our more costly states to practice forest management. In this case, mechanical site preparation. So we'll see that green has a bright, or Texas has a bright green color, indicating that it was a little bit cheaper to practice mechanical site preparation in Texas compared to something like South Carolina, where we observed the cost to be a little bit higher. However, one thing to note is the N, or the number of responses that is kind of feeding into that, where we only had 3 responses in South Carolina. Texas only had 1, so you do have to take those numbers with a little bit of grain of salt when there is low responses. We can either click on the state to see how the state was kind of reporting out. We can click on another state if there was multiple regions reported in it. For example, Alabama had a couple different regions in it. All 3 regions are actually represented in Alabama, and we can explore how those costs are just across Alabama within those regions using a bar chart, or this lower chart here, which we'll talk about in a little bit. If you wanted to select multiple states, you can click Control on your keyboard and then select multiple states, and you can kind of build just the data set that you want for those individual states. And these notes are also right up top here. Moving to the next little pane, the physiographical regions. So one will describe what the southern coastal plain, northern coastal plain, and Piedmont are. There's a map, if you remember, on the homepage. So if you wanted to explore that further, you can see the actual map. However, here's a brief description of what those regions are. And these 2 text planes or text panels are dynamic. So as you click on them, they change respectively, and they give you a little bit of description of what's going on the chart here. So this is telling us that it had the northern coastal plain had the highest average at $203, where our Piedmont region was $151. If we select a couple states that those values will change to reflect the states that are selected. This bottom text is dynamic and it tells us about the actual states that are going on and tells us how much our actual states were ranking. Moving over to persistent page filters. If you are really interested in only a very specific range or a very specific region, you can click the persistent page filters to only see one region. So let's say we only wanted to see data from the Piedmont, we can just click that, and then it'll just kind of lock that filter in on this page so we don't have to keep toggling back and forth. We can also click multiple things if you are curious with more than one individual physiographical region. And if you don't care, you just want to see all the data, you can either select all of them or select none of them. Provider type is our next persistent page filter, where we have a couple different options. And this is based on how the data came to us within the 2022 Costs and Trends Survey. So there was consultants practicing on non-industrial land, which was consultant foresters practicing on family forest owner land. So non-industrial foresters or non-industrial private lands forest owners or family forest owners are all kind of the same exact thing. It's just our mom and pops that are owning land and they're not an industrial land owner. Family forest owner data is data that came to us from family forest owners directly, such as many of the FLA owners who provided data for us that were not necessarily the forester that was operating on those lands. Industrial land data is land that or information that came from industrial land owners. And our private FFO land is private industrial contractors that were operating on family forest owners. Public on non-industrial is going to be public foresters operating on non-industrial private forest land, or public foresters. It's very similar to our private on FFO. And our public on public is going to be our public lands foresters operating on our publicly owned land bases, much like our state and national forests and such as like those two examples. These categories might be getting merged together just for a little bit of simplicity in the future. However, but by clicking on them, it'll allow us to see only those data or that data set down here in the lower pane as well as in the upper panes. So keeping forward with all the data, this bottom table has a lot of data which individuals may or may not be interested in. Reading through it, we have a couple different things going on. So across the top here, we have all the regions, the northern coastal plain, the Piedmont, southern coastal plain, as well as if we scroll all the way over, we have our total averages. So if you want to see the average of the average, well, that is located here. Across the top, these each section kind of repeats. So we have our average cost for each region, the total number of acres reported for each region, our average tract size, which could be important if you're trying to see if you can experience a similar cost, and our number of respondents that actually provided data. Just remember that the lower the N, the lower the number of people that reported, and your numbers may be different. So higher Ns generally have a closer and better average value. In this first column, we see a couple different things, and they're ordered in methods, passes, and state. So our first thing that is on here is bedding all types. So in mechanical site preparation, when you're preparing to plant a tree, there's a couple different things that you could do. You could be doing bedding, chopping and bedding, chopping and raking, etc., moving down the column. But you can also do a couple of those operations more than once. For example, drum chopping, you may go past the site a couple times. So if we open up drum chopping, you'll see that there's double pass and single pass. So by clicking on the little plus arrow, you can expand these fields, and by clicking the minus arrow, you can collapse them. Expanding the fields, you'll see double pass, which means that they went past the site twice. Single pass, they went past it once. And if we want to explore that to the next layout, we'll see the number of states that actually reported those. So we saw across in Alabama and North Carolina. If we click on an individual value, it'll bring us it'll zoom into it on the map so we can actually see where those values came from. However, we can also click on greater values on the hierarchy, such as just double paths, and we can see everywhere where double paths was reported compared to single paths. Or we can just click on drum chopping in total and see where all of our drum chopping data came from. To unselect something, you can just click on it or click anywhere else on the screen. So let's go with one that has a lot of data. Looking on here, I see bedding all types. If we click on bedding all types, we can copy and paste this value and grab these numbers and use export them to something like Excel or a database where we can explore them further. To do that, we just need to right click on it, copy our values, and copy the selection. Then opening up an Excel document, we can simply paste our value in there and we'll receive all that data in there. So we'll have our methods, we'll have our regions, average cost, and it kind of brings in all of our label headings for us. So it's pretty easy to kind of copy and paste the data out and explore it to where you would like to. If you're interested in exploring more information, you can simply expand these fields and then copy and paste the data again. So if we go up here and we select bedding, copy selection, then go back to Excel. We can paste all of that data in our Excel table as well, where you can extrapolate it further for your own analysis, depending on what you're looking at. Looking at the trend data, you might be thinking, are these values higher or lower than reported values? We have a couple different ways to look at that. So moving to our next portion of the screen, we have historical trend data where we can either look at our nominal or current dollars or our real or our constant dollars. So our historical trend data, nominal is going to be the historical dollars or the value that they paid in that day's time, where our real dollars or constant dollars is going to be adjusted for inflation. So we kind of see everything in 2022 dollars. First, looking at our nominal dollars, we'll see that the cost of mechanical site prep was moving upward, as indicated by this dotted line. Moving our cursor over it, it'll kind of report out exactly what the actual values were in that time period and the year for it. So if we move all the way up here to 2022, we'll see that our average value was $216 in the northern coastal plain, which is higher than historical values. But if we flip over from our nominal values to our real dollars by clicking on that, we'll see that those values are actually a little bit lower than what we saw in the past when adjusted for inflation. You can copy and paste data out of this table as well. There's two easy ways to do it. You can either right click on a value and copy a whole entire selection for all of the data, or if you're just interested in something like the last 10 years, you can just drag your cursor and highlight the data that you're interested in, and it'll filter down the data on this bottom pane again. Persistent page filters, you can filter it by regions. Depending on how the data was reported in past surveys, there's only certain ways that we can tease this out. So we have coastal plain and Piedmont, which is all of our regions, and we can explore those further on here. So if you click on one, you'll only see the trends for that data set as well as that data set throughout time. Moving over to a different one. Well, I guess to go back to the page that you're on, you can just click off of the historical trend data that you're actually currently on. Moving over to another one, for example, herbicide site prep, herbicide application. We can see a very similar layout, and all of our pages are going to follow a very similar layout. where we have our average cost by region with a bar chart, an interactive map, dynamic text, persistent page filters, as well as our cost per acre in tabular format located down here. Fertilization also looks quite similar. Timber cruising does as well. Timber marking, we'll see that. And we'll skip on over to our custodial management page, where we have one other thing going on. On our custodial management page, there is data was recorded in a couple different ways. So all of our values from mechanical site prep, or most of our values from mechanical site prep to pre-commercial thinning are recorded in dollars per acre. So if you wanted to figure out how much of that practice is going to cost, you can just multiply the dollars per acre by the number of acres you're willing to practice that on, and you can get estimate a cost that way. However, for custodial management, not everything is as easy as dollars per acre. So we have a couple different units of cost located down here underneath persistent page filters. If we want things to be only recorded in dollars per acre, we can click on acres. However, a couple different units also exist. For example, hours. Hours is going to be things that just cost in dollars per hour or dollars per mile, and we can look at those here. If we have multiple things on, they'll be located underneath each subheading or major heading. So we can see our dollars per acre activities listed up here. Scrolling down, we'll have our dollars per feet for things like maintaining property boundaries, conducting road construction or maintenance, and our hourly costs listed down here. However, these values kind of make these graphics make most sense when you're looking at the same unit of cost. So I would encourage you, if you're using these values, just to make sure you're in the right units of cost. Moving over to emerging technology. This is a new category that we added out of demand and need in an evolving forestry world. There's a couple different things that are going on in our emerging technology category, such as the usage of drones. Drones are being used on a lot of larger parcels, as well as being explored by a lot of companies. And they're using drones for things like aerial imagery, mapping, just general purposes, and doing some herbicide work as well. And you can explore those costs underneath the emerging technology category. We hope to expand this in the future with future editions of the survey, and we really value your input when you kind of fill out the survey and give us data or provide us with data to explore these costs further and provide more people with access to them. Lastly, moving to our sites tab, we can see a lot of information about how who has helped out with the survey and where you can find more information regarding the survey. And like Adam had said, as well as Michelle, this survey has been going on since 1952, all the way to 2022, and we expect it to continue on in future years. Here is where you can find where the actual magazine article was published in the Forest Farmer, which is now known as the Forest Landowner magazine. Adjusting for cost indices, all of our costs are going to be reported using our consumer price index or our producer price index. And you can explore different price indexes, such as the consumer price index, using our select cost indices button. So that's located underneath the sites tab and under select cost indices. There you'll see how our cost indices have kind of changed throughout time. And ones that we are tracking is our consumer price index, our diesel fuel price index, the producer price index, as well as our softwood lumber index. These values can be located down here on the bottom for most things. And to adjust a value, you can simply multiply the nominal cost by the present day value of the index, and then divide it by the respective year's index value to adjust that using a different metric, such as the consumer price index. By selecting an individual data set, you can this dynamic text will change to tell you what was actually happening within those years. Sometimes it takes a little bit, my computer's a little bit slow. But we can also just click on an individual line to kind of see how that one has changed throughout time as well. I believe that is all that I have for you regarding the Power BI dashboard. And I think we're going to open it up to questions unless Adam has a little bit more to say.
Jeremy, you can show them real quick once you're sharing your screen. We do have sources of cost share we recorded for the first time in 2022. And that is available there on the main home screen on the bottom right corner there. You can take a look at that. We primarily are doing it for two reasons. One, we're able to track that and see how it impacts some of the responses we get for the cost and see if it's included in those costs or not. But also, or the price of those practices, but also, you know, we can keep it on hand here as a tool of what's going on around the country. So, or around the region. So just to make folks aware that's what that's there for. It kind of has multiple purposes. It's there for us and working through the data, but it's also, we're keeping track of it there in the table in general. I think that's all I have though. So we'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has. And Jeremy, thank you for that overview.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
Jeremy, it looks like there's one question in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see that there, but it says many state forest commissions and service agencies have detailed cost data. Do you have interest in exploring their numbers in future efforts to increase the robust sample sizes and data?
Yeah, so we have been working with the forestry commissions, and we do have data that's included here from some of those folks. We're hoping to obviously increase our participation across all categories. That's one thing I'm really interested in. You know, originally the main thing was just to get more participants in general. Now we're kind of seeing where the participants are coming from and really trying to improve in places we need more data, because we really want to improve the survey in terms of, you know, having a robust sample from the public side of things, the private side of things, but different categories on the private side as well. So there are, I want to say we had 7. Did we have 7 forestry commissions that submitted data this past year? So I guess 7 of the 14 states we collected data from in that regard.
And there's another one asking, will this be available? And I'll go ahead and answer that. Yes, this is published in Forest Landowner magazine, and that will be closer towards the end of the year. This dashboard is also on our website. In the chat, you'll see a link there as well. And then in the follow-up email, we will include the link to the dashboard as well as a recording of this session. Another question was just asking what section would be McCormick County. I'm not sure what state that is because I'm not that familiar with
South Carolina. Georgia's in South Carolina.
Okay.
I'm not sure where McCormick County is located in the South Carolina.
That's what I was wondering, because I know it's split. I thought Georgia was in upstate, but we'll get back to you on that, Georgia.
Yep. Another one that came in, how could a group of forest landowners in a smaller area such as by county be orchestrated?
Yeah, so we don't, I mean, we would have to collect the county by county data from the participants to be able to break it down that far. We don't think it's that necessary. Again, one thing to keep in mind, these cost of practices, these weighted averages that you're getting, they're not going to tell you exactly what any individual person's costs are going to be. Those are going to vary tremendously from landowner to landowner based on certain circumstances. So I think breaking it down by like we did, not only in subcategories in the regions within, you know, the Southeast, but within states and subregions within the states, is about as far down as probably logical in that regard, that we can keep up with. And also, it is, I think, efficient and sufficient for really forecasting use, looking at trends and kind of using it to make decisions down the road, more or less than anything else.
Okay, another question just came in. How many comparable landowners are needed in a specific county to be useful and actionable in your opinion?
Adam, might change that to state or region. I mean, it's a good question.
Yeah,
About validity of data. How much do we need to
right.
make statistically viable sample?
Yep. So historically, I know within the cost of practice survey, usually within any one category, the way you break it down, we tend to, at least for the report that has been coming out, we tend to take, so it depends on the category. So if you break it down to a specific forestry practice in a specific state and a specific subregion, we were, I think, including anything from 5 to 10 responses in the report. We decided to include all those in all the data we received that was viable, that was useful data, with, minus any outliers or bad responses that just didn't fit or were typos in this table. So you can go through there yourself and you can actually see, okay, this is the cost that was reported. It was an N of 25, or this was the cost that was reported, for drum chopping in Alabama and the lower coastal plain, and it was an N of 1. So we decided to put all the data in at this time so you can keep track of that and see yourself, where that came from. That may be something that we get feedback on and we decide to trim out, but we wanted to try and build this over time and show as much detail and break it down as much as possible as we can, with the understanding of that N being there to show you what you're actually dealing with.
Looks like we have a question in the chat. Do you have in tree planting tag the genetic category of seedlings?
What was that question again? Sorry.
That's okay. Do you have in the tree planting tab the genetic category of seedlings?
Yes, I do think we have genetic data, genetic category.
I believe so. So kind of going on our tree planting tab, we can go under how the tree was actually planted. So we can explore the method, site, root type, species, variety, and state. So first is our method. First is going to be our type of tree, then our method of planting, our individual site, our root stock, which would be bare root in this case, loblolly pine. There was no species variety for that one that was reported. But if there was individual varieties, that information would be located here. If we explore another one, it may have that information, but if we have that information, it's located underneath the actual species and before the state.
Hey,
McCormick County, just to circle back to that question.
Yep.
McCormick County would fall under the southern coastal plain, I believe.
Does anyone have any other questions? Great questions, and I'm really excited about this dashboard. I'm learning as we go to, and there's some great information here and some great ways to use it. So I really want to thank both Adam and Jeremy and recognize that this is a foundation project. It was funded by a grant from U.S. Forest Service, and also through donations to the foundation. So if this is something that you find useful, if you would consider donating to the foundation, we can keep projects like this going. And unless there's anything else, I just want to thank everyone for their time, and we will send this recording out to you later this week. Oh, wait, there's one more question. One more question popping up. In custodial management, property taxes look high. Can you explain?
custodial management of property taxes look high. So this information is just kind of brought is what is brought in. And so we just kind of provide the data that was provided to us. So the best way to kind of improve that is if we get a little bit more information provided from our from individuals who respond to the data, we can get better answers. But this is just survey results, and so we can only provide what is actually provided to us. Be my best response to that.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that too and make sure that there's not an outlier in there that we missed, but I'll screen back through there and take a look at that, and we'll be happy to make sure we get that to you.
Sounds good. All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and end this session today. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact us and we can get those answered for you. And we will send this out to you, the recording as well as the link to the portal here within the next week or so. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Maggers. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.